0 to $1 million a year. How? It's like, well, pretty much the first 2 years I was preparing for it. I just didn't know. Guns were pulled on me, knives were pulled on me, cops were pulled on me. I started being used to hearing gunshots. I mean, it was crazy. Like, people underestimate how much work they have to do, right, to get through the failures, and then they overestimate like what they have to do to be successful a lot of times. But you just got to go through it. It's like if there's 10 doors in front of you, you just got to keep knocking till you hit the 10th door or till you hit the right door. It's just a matter of time. Even if you have low skill, even if you're not as good as someone else, maybe your level of success won't be the same, but you will have some level of success.
If I get the timeline right, you did door-to-door sales.
Yeah, that was rough.
Before you had your first big year online, right?
Yes. So yeah, door to door was rough. Basically what we did is we came out to St. George for a trial run. It was hard, super hard. Didn't make a single sale. They're like, oh, don't worry. Like, it's summer, blah, blah, blah. So then we actually...
Which, by the way, summer in St. George is like 110 degrees.
Oh, dude, it's rough. Yeah. So you're sweating like crazy. And, people are, not excited around the door. Also, like in more affluent areas, it's just a lot harder because, they're like, hey, dude, like, I'm good. Like, I'll call if I want it. Right. So we actually went out to Houston. We were getting crushed. Like, the team was doing terrible. And so one of the easier states to sell in, at least as what they said, was Alabama. So we like pack up in the middle of it and we go to Alabama. And I start knocking in like February, and I knocked for like 6-7 months straight, 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, pretty much between the areas. So you'd knock for about 8 hours, 2 hours of driving, 2 hours of driving back. And it was 6 days a week. You got 1 day off. It was terrible. I mean, it was one of the
terrible,
best,
but also
right, one of the best and worst
man.
experiences of my life. Yeah, I mean that was the hardest thing I've ever done. I think it was harder than building an 8-figure business. It was that hard. And so we go to Alabama, and I became one of the top reps. But I worked really hard. But I mean, guns were pulled on me, knives were pulled on me, cops were pulled on me. I mean, I started being used to hearing gunshots. I mean, it was crazy. Like, I didn't even know. I wouldn't say I was super sheltered, but like I didn't even know. I was like, man, like, I didn't even know there were houses like this size, like super, like obviously higher crime areas because we're selling alarms. But I mean, I learned so much how to talk to people and how to handle objections and all kinds of things that when I did transition online, and I think that's why I made $1 million in a year because, 0 to $1 million a year. How? It's like, well, pretty much the first 2 years I was preparing for it. I just didn't know. And so when I got people on the phone, I was like, oh, you want this? Right. It was so easy to close because I was selling ice to an Eskimo. I mean, they did not want it. And so, I can go as much detail as you like, but that's the gist. And it was one of the best / worst experiences of my life, but I'm so glad I did it. I mean, I owe a lot to it: work ethic, mindset, persistence, just so many intangibles that come with door to door. It's brutal.
Yeah. I mean, I had a little bit of an agenda in asking about it, which is just, I really, as a general takeaway from my show in general, I want people that listen to my show to actually embrace sales, embrace the art of persuasion. Mm-hmm. Like it's the most valuable skill set in the world. Mm-hmm. And there's really no way to learn. And I think this is the bigger takeaway is like, I'm sure everybody's like, oh yeah, I'd love to be persuasive, right? That's great. There's no way to get persuasive without sucking at it.
Oh yeah.
And even if you're naturally good at it, you still suck at it because you hate the way it feels.
Yeah, it feels awkward.
You have to learn to not hate when it doesn't work.
Yeah. Or just feel awkward. I mean, like people, they open the door and they're obviously annoyed, and like it's just a weird feeling because you're not used to it. And so, you just get used to it after a while where them being awkward, so oh, no worries. And you just push through these types of objections. It was like, it was such a good experience.
And it's like, to me, I think the reason that the people, I want to like physicalize it for people where it's like an energetic field, and like your energy, you have to develop like a callus on your energy field where like their annoyance or their negativity or their hostility or and this is such a great life skill. But like selling is this like compressed incubator in which to learn it, is that like whatever their energy field is, once you develop that like objective boundary of your own, it doesn't get to bleed into you.
Yeah.
And like, but it takes like those first 100 like I'm so sorry. Like those moments to get to where you just have that callus and you can be emotionally neutral.
It took me 2 months before I felt comfortable. Like I was awful, but after 2 months, you just realize like I'm out here, I'm spending my time. Like,
so in 2 months, 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. How many conversations do you think it took in 2 months?
I mean, we'll knock 100, 150 doors a day.
Okay.
So, I mean, you're having, you know, let's say half open the door, maybe let's say it's less, a third. I mean, you're still having 33. And then on top of that, if you get in, you have a much longer conversation. It could be as high as a half hour. So, you know,
so in 6 days a week, 8 hours a day, it's 48 hours a month, every 4 weeks. So let's say in 2 months, it's about 100 hours.
Yeah.
And you're having, you said maybe 30, 35 conversations a day?
Minimum. I mean, it's probably more, but I mean,
so you're
at the
talking
worst,
3,000 to 5,000 conversations.
It's a lot.
Before you got over your distaste for it.
And because it's just so, I mean, especially door to door, you see them walking up, you're like, your heart's beating in your chest. They're kind of like, who are you? I mean, it's much more awkward than a phone call. So when I did calls, I'm like, dude, this is cake. Like, they want it. I don't have to see them. I'm sitting on the couch in my underwear. Like, it was like, it was night and day.
But it's good to know, because like people are like, you know, maybe there's people that are running a funnel and they get on the phone and they're like, oh, I hate it. It's so awkward. It's like, okay, well, you can make that not awkward.
Yeah.
Go knock on 5,000 doors.
People underestimate how much like work they have to do, right, to get through the failures, and then they overestimate like what they have to do to be successful a lot of times. So it's like, but you just got to go through it, and that's why like that's why I say like some people, it's like if there's 10 doors in front of you, you just got to keep knocking till you hit the 10th door or till you hit the right door. It's just a matter of time. Even if you have low skill, even if you're not as good as someone else, maybe your level of success won't be the same, but you will have some level of success.
Yeah, my Instagram account was like totally jacked up. I had this like growth hacker that just messed it up. The engagement was terrible. Like everything, basically all the followers were bots, B-O-T and B-O-U-G-H-T.
Yeah.
And somebody was like, okay, well, you got to hit the reset button, whatever, blah, blah, blah. They're like, you need to do reels. Reels your account will catch, right? And they were right. I did a reel. I did another reel. I did another reel. I've now had 4 reels that have had over 1.5 million views.
That's insane.
But it was the 219th reel.
Yeah.
Was the first one that actually didn't suck. Like did okay.
Well, yeah, and it's like, it's even
so
like
218 reel. You're talking about knocking on doors. I knocked on 218 real doors that didn't work.
Yeah,
but somebody that I trusted told me that eventually it would.
Yeah, and I don't know how it is for you, but like I think if you fall more in love with the process, like the results become the second thing, because like even right now I'm trying to go my YouTube and like it's been slow. Like it's at 11 and I want to get it to 6 figures in subscribers, but I'm just like, I'm not going to stop. So it's like, let's just at least enjoy it. And if I keep going, I just feel like if I keep going for the next 10, 15 years, it's like, there's no way, right? I'm not that bad on camera, even if I am bad, right? And so I think that's a shift in mindset for people too, is like, you have to fall in love with the process, because if it's so result driven all the time, it's just never enough. Because once you hit that result, it will just be like, guys like you and me, we just want to hit the next thing. Yeah. And so,
well, I think that's a really interesting paradigm too for people, and a lot of the listeners to this show are people that are transitioning. They're either considering the transition, they're in the transition, or they've just made the transition from employee to entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And I think the basic contract of employment, I mean like the social contract that underlies the concept of employment, it is fundamentally an exchange of result for result, right? You, the employer, get the result of me showing up, giving my time, achieving my role description, and then I get the result of the steady paycheck, the predictable schedule, the certainty for my family. You're exchanging results. You're not exchanging process. You're exchanging results. Yeah. And I think that is probably the hardest thing, that the majority of people in that world, in that model, either considering, in the middle of, or having recently switched from employee to entrepreneur, that's actually probably what you said is the hardest thing for them, is to understand you're not swapping results anymore.
Yeah.
You're just growing within a process.
Yeah, correct. I agree 100% with that.
And I personally believe one of the reasons I'm such a proponent of entrepreneurialism is I think life is a lot better. And you're a lot happier when you're growing within processes rather than trying to exchange results.
I agree. Yeah. I love it too, man. I mean, I couldn't agree more with what you said. I mean, it's right on the money.
So you're here doing an event for elite CEOs. Why don't we start there? Tell us what you're doing.
No, it was awesome. So every, about 3-4 months, I think 3 events a year, we'll have some of our highest paying private clients come out to a different location. Typically we do Miami, but like you said, we wanted to mix it up. We did St. George. And so it just kind of worked itself out. So we just finished. It was 3 days. It was awesome. I love having events just because everyone meets each other on the computer these days. So it's like when you meet in person, the connection's so much higher. I think it makes it more real for people. So we really try to do it for those, clients, and we have a good time.
That's pretty cool. So how did you pick St. George?
To be quite, if I'm being 100% honest, when you're booking, you book for events and the hotels, they want these massive fees and all these down payments. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to reverse engineer this and find a place that doesn't need these massive fees up front. So I can just, be a little more relaxed. And so I started looking for these resorts that prepared the food and all that stuff. And so that's why we're at this resort, because it just had all those things. And I decided, hey, let's just go ahead and try it out. So
is this your first time here?
This is the second time I've been here. The first time I was here was back when I was around, I think 22, 23. Yeah. And I was doing the door-to-door sales. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So you knew you were coming to a nice spot.
Yeah.
Like I probably shouldn't say this, but like St. George is beautiful. It's like
awesome.
Undiscovered gem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and just so you know, like right now how far are we from my house, do you think? We're 7 minutes from my house.
Super far.
So it's
drive.
very, very small world coincidence that your event is here.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad you're here. Maybe talk a little bit about Elite CEOs. So I remember I started seeing your ads. I think I first saw you. I don't remember if I saw you or your ads first, but were you at Funnel Hacking Live in the one in Nashville in February of like 2020?
Yes, I think so. I think so. Correct.
And you were already like, I think were you getting a 2CC award there?
I think I was a 10X award. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
So I had seen you before that, but that was, I don't know, like you said, when you meet people in person, they become more real. I was like, oh, that's that Tanner guy. I've seen his ads. And it was fitness CEOs at the time.
Correct.
And it was where you were working with like gym owners and trainers?
Yeah, just only trainers. So because, my whole background was fitness, and that's how I even got into consulting. It was never my plan, but I just had such great success building that, fitness business that's how it transitioned. And then, as you help more people, I feel like there's more opportunities, there's more people asking for help. And so I just kind of kept running with it. So
tell me what you did in the fitness space.
Yeah. So, out of college, I always wanted to play in the NFL. That was my whole goal. A million guys want to do it. I got injured multiple times. I also think I wasn't good enough, but I took it as far as I could. And I was really proud of that. When that ended, I just realized I didn't want to be an engineer. So I started learning online marketing. I don't know if you would know him, but he's good friends with Russell Brunson, David Fry. So he's married to one of Russell's cousins. And so it just so happened, he's like, hey dude, look, like you want to make a lot of money, right? I was like, yeah, my dad was a teacher. We had 7 kids in the house. And he said, look, come back, drop out of school. I'll show you everything I know. So I started learning about funnels and emails and opt-ins. I didn't even know what those things were. I was like, why don't they call it an email, put your info? And he's like, Tanner, just like shut up, like just follow the process. So I started doing that. I make no money for 2 years, but I was super heavy into modeling and bodybuilding. And he's like, you should build an online fitness business. And that's where it started from. I wouldn't even say I was like the most passionate about it. I love fitness, but I was just like, dude, I don't know what to do. And he said, do something you're good at. And so I did that, and it took me about 2 years to start making money. But once I started making money, I did $1 million in a year. And that really, piqued people's interest. I got my ClickFunnels award, and then people were like, oh, who is this guy? And that's really how I started helping trainers and, going from there because of that initial success.
So how old were you when you got into this stuff?
23, right? Because it was like when I finished college, right? Like, and I didn't even finish college, but it was when I finished football. And so 23, and then I didn't make any money till I was about 25, and then 25, everything exploded. And so, 2 years I kind of ate dirt.
So you were doing like online, like training?
Yeah. So like, meal plans,
so you weren't coaching trainers, you were just like doing training. Yeah, just
like getting people in shape, right? Because that's what I knew. I was good at it, and I looked the part. Like if you type my name on Google, I'm sure you'll see some interesting pictures. So that's what I knew, and then it just transitioned from there. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were like, I've seen it. You were like a cover men's fitness type of cover model.
I was doing fitness. I was doing fitness modeling, and I was, had magazine covers and stuff. And I thought that was my way to fame. Like I thought the way to get to where I wanted was like, hey, I'm in shape. I have this good body. Like I'm going to use this to get to the top. And, in hindsight, I didn't do anything like, there's some photos I probably am like, I wish I hadn't shot that, but I didn't do anything to kind of like long lasting or like, something that I wouldn't want my mom to see.
You don't have a Kim Kardashian video out there?
None of that. Okay, none of that. And so, but that's how I thought it was going to explode, and it never really happened, And I was like, man, all these influencers, they have all these followers, but like they're broke. Like, this isn't very fun. And that's when I started kind of realizing, hey, I need to build a business. I need to get good at something.
I need to be more than just a piece of meat.
Yeah. And the irony is that, guys think you're going to get all these girls by doing it, but you just get more guys. You just get more guys' attention or like compliments, like, hey, bro. And it's like, so it kind of turns the opposite way as well.
You get a bunch of people that want to like you to give them like free meal plans. And
stuff. Yeah. Or like,
or other things.
Or nutrition. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or other things. Exactly.
So, okay. That's really interesting. And yeah, I mean, that's one thing that the internet has taught us. There are a lot of really fit people out there.
Oh, tons.
Like having a six pack ain't what it used to be.
At all. At all.
Although admittedly you were in really good shape. I have to give
appreciate
credit where it's due. So you train people for a while and let's go back to that because you made $1 million in a year training people online.
Yeah. And
without mentoring, there wasn't like coaching programs for that.
I did, but I mean, it's ironic. So I had my mentor, David Fry, and he knew low ticket, but the problem with low ticket, at least for me, is I had no money. So he's like, you got to spend money on ads. I'm like, dude, I live at my parents. Like, I'm working at your house. This doesn't work. So I actually was selling door to door. I told you I did St. George. I did that for 6-7 months, got really good at sales. I didn't know it at the time, but I did. And then I saw an ad, on Facebook, how to build your online fitness business. And I clicked on it. I got on the call, high pressured sell into a $5,000 program. And I didn't even know what high ticket sales was. I was like, and I had $2,000 in my bank account. So I'm like, okay, $2,000, $3,000 on a credit card. And I didn't even go through the course, like 100% honest. Like I got in and I just was like, I was watching the videos and nothing bad or anything bad to say about the person's course, but they're just a little eccentric for me and stuff. I was like, dude, like, I don't care. Like, I just want to know what to do. So I just said, what do I do? They're like, okay, change your price from $47 to $1,500. I was like, are you serious? Like, yeah, I was like, there's no way. I just start reaching out to people.
That was in the course though. They said you need to change your pricing.
Yeah. But I mean, I got that from basically like the Facebook group. Like I just asked one of the coaches like, hey, like what's the premise? And they're like, reach out to people, get on a call, $1,500 plus. And I was like, there's no way someone's going to pay that. And in the first week I made $10,000. I was like, holy crap. Cause I was making, $3,000 a month and I quit everything. I moved home. I told my parents, hey, I finally figured this thing out. I'm going to go ham. And I just stayed in their bedroom, for over a year, didn't go anywhere, didn't leave, didn't go on dates. And I just did 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I just was so scared of like it not working or failing that I just did not leave until I knew like I had it down. So
I feel like there's like 3 really key things in what you just said in that story you told. So I'm going to touch on them and we can dig deeper on one or more of them. So first of all, you were talking about when you went through that course and you're like, this guy, like you said he's eccentric. Maybe he talks too much or he tells a bunch of like random side tangent stories and you just want the facts. So my experience is that there's like 2 kinds of people on the internet. And I correlate it to like energy and vibration and stuff. There's like, I feel like lower energy people, they're looking for something to connect to or belong to or like a friend, right? And so they're gonna like love all that stuff. And then there's like the higher energy people that are just like, I don't need you to enroll me in doing the work. I'm already here to do the work. Just tell me the damn thing to do, right? Mm-hmm. And it's hard as a marketer, like to win the favor of both groups, right? And so you almost kind of have to like pick your poison. But I do think that what I heard in that anecdote was you were already like a really driven, motivated person.
Oh, yeah, insanely. My dad, and I got, me and my dad had some issues growing up, and looking back, I really respect him because he was doing the best he knew how. And I think that's like the currency, like hard work and like doing your best, like speaks volumes to me about anyone, even if you're terrible. Like if you're working hard, I really respect it. But I mean, he's a teacher. We have 7 kids.
Jeez, yeah.
That didn't cut it. So he's doing power washing. He's mowing. He's doing insurance sales on the side. And so growing up, I thought that was normal. And my parents would take us and like, we'd clean like institutes or churches that like, I mean, for extra money. And I remember we would power wash some of my friends, like, driveways. And it was embarrassing because I'm like, dude, like, why are you like doing this? But that's just how I grew up. And so going back to your fact is, my parents, I don't even think, they were like, hey, you got to make your own way, right? Like, I don't even think they wouldn't even have the money to do it, but they were just like, kind of like your parents, like, yeah, so like, you want to go to college? Like, get a scholarship. You want a car? Like, get your own. Oh, you want to go to the movies? Do you have a job? I was like, Dad, I'm 14. No, well, I guess can't go. No, it was that type of environment. So I just thought that was normal. And so when I got kind of thrown out into the entrepreneur world, I went through a lot of stuff that I think a lot of people get stopped before success because they can't handle it. And I just was so scared of failing and so like scared of ridicule that I think I just was like, I'm going until I'll be homeless. I just did not care unless I was going to be successful, I guess.
So why, and I totally relate because I'm the same way, but I don't want to assume that everybody else does because I know they don't. Why weren't you like, why do you think you were wired to say, I literally, like, I'll make this work to the point of like death, as opposed to like, I'll try really hard, but if it's not working, I'll get a job?
I think so. As a young kid, you brought something up on when we were speaking, a little socially awkward. And I think I had 2 older sisters, and I was also raised very conservative, LDS, Mormon. And so I didn't hear cuss words. I didn't hear foul language. I didn't have brothers. And so, I grew up playing dress up and tea parties, and my dad just let it happen. I was like, Dad, you could have helped me a little. Right. And so when I went to school, I just think a lot of kids made fun of me because I was a little weird. I didn't really have everything together. And I just was kind of like, I had a good heart, I think, and it was really hard for me to like see kids be rude to me for no reason. I was like, man, like I didn't do anything to you. And so that's actually what got me into fitness. And I got a very kind of hard exterior because my parents, they'd always tell me to pray. And I'm not against religion or anything like that per se, but I would pray really hard and like nothing would happen. And kids would still mess with me. And I remember going to the gym and lifting weights and just getting bigger. 12 years old, I was going to the gym at 5:30 in the morning. And then the kids left me alone. And I was like, you know what? Like, no matter what they say, I can just be like, I'm bigger than you and I'll beat you up. And then I just started seeing that with school. I started seeing that with sports. And so I think that's like my defense mechanism, and like where my insecurity comes from was like, if I make more money than you, if I get bigger than you, if I get a better girlfriend than you, like you can say whatever you want, but at the end of the day, like I am better than you. And that drove a lot of my success. And it also, it can get in unhealthy amounts, right? But I just did not want people to think I was a loser. And when I left school as an engineer, I was going to make 6 figures a year, to go do this. They're like, my girlfriend at the time, my ex, like she left. Her mom thought I was stupid. My parents, I think they like support me, but they're all kind of like, okay. My brother would make comments, like, we're cool now, but at the time he's like, yeah, how's your business going? And he knew it wasn't going well. Right. And so I just was like, I just refused to like basically accept that they were right. And so I just said, I don't care what it takes. Like, I'm not stopping. Cause I would see, it's funny, Billie Jean wants ads. I'd see him and I was like, not disrespectful at all. Like some people see it like, oh, what's this scam? What's that? I just like, bro, like this guy, like, I know he's smart, but it's like, I know I can do this. Like, what does he have that I don't? And that's just how I've always been. And so I just was like determined, I'm going to stick with this until it works. I don't care what it takes. And that's what I did. I mean, I didn't have much of a life for a few years.
Yeah. And, I've done probably 210, 215 interviews on this show now. And like, everybody's got that story. Something. That phase, that the combination of the something to prove, the chip on their shoulder, the way to overcome what they perceive as their own helplessness or inadequacy, coupled with some period of time when they just put their nose to the grindstone and just grinded. Like we use that term now, like, oh, you got to grind. Like, no, but like the people that I talk to on my show, and we specifically bring in like outlier examples of success. Like they just have a gear that they can go into. So my question is, you don't really have any of those things to prove anymore, right? Like I doubt that you're still getting crap about how's your business going. You're like, oh,
I mean,
you mean the last week? Like,
yeah, not anymore. I mean, not that, but I think what's interesting with me is like, I don't even know what the word is, but I am very like type A. Like I always feel like I have to be moving forward. I always feel like I have to go the next level because it's like there's something Michael Jordan said in his documentary. I don't know if you watched it.
I've watched it.
I can't remember how he worded it exactly, but it's basically like, no matter how good you get, like there's always another level. And that's like what drove him to be the greatest. And like, I really feel that. And when I see, guys like yourself or, like we have a mutual friend, Alex, or like you brought up Dan Henry earlier, just other guys, like I don't feel jealous. I don't feel like upset. I just am like, dude, I want to like be around those guys and get to the same level as they're going, and like it really inspires me. And you know, sometimes at a detriment, like you know, sometimes I do have a little imbalance in my life, and I can go a little overboard, but like I love it, and it's more just like I want to be the best I can be, so when I look back when I'm old, I just don't have regrets. Like I'm fearful of regrets, and like something that I've been really proud of myself to this point in my life, I just turned 30, is everything I've done 110%. And so even when football ended and I couldn't go to the NFL and all those things, I knew that I had done more work than any of those guys. They just were so much more gifted than me, and I have no problem saying that. Like I played with multiple first round picks, and when they went to the first round, I was like, that makes sense. Like you're 6'8", you run a 4.4, you're 280 pounds, like I am not, like, period. But that's always been that always makes me feel good when I'm doing my best, because no matter what level of talent we have, like I kind of feel like we owe that to ourselves to just be the best we can be and not just settle. So
I just so relate to that, right? Like, you know, I have a pretty regimented life. And I love it. Like people think I'm nuts, and I'm like, no, I'm so happy fun. All the time. Like it's 3:40 in the morning and I'm up and you're asleep and I'm so happy about it, you know? And they're like, you're weird. Yeah. And so I wonder, and like, you know, I mean, you mentioned Alex. Yeah. Earlier today I talked to Ed Milet. I mean, that guy is just a beast, dude. It's like, and it's like, and I'm, you know, I wouldn't want to be lifting buddies with you or Alex or Ed Milet, right? You're all
tough, man.
Way bigger and stronger than me. But like, but I actually know that I'd work just as hard as you, right? Like, so I guess my question, and you know, I think that there's basically two non-negotiable conditions for massive success in this world. And one is that level of work ethic, the kind of work ethic that most people don't even wish they had, because they don't think they like, oh, that wouldn't even sound fun, right? Yeah. But then, and then I'll get to the second one, but actually let's camp on the first one for a second. Sure. Like, where do you think that comes from? Because not everybody that grows up with a hardworking teacher dad with 7 kids ends up being that person. Where does that come from?
You know, I give a lot of credit to my dad. I don't know, when there's these moments, I think, in life where you kind of know that was a pivotal moment. And there was a moment for me when I was a little kid, and I was getting made fun of pretty ruthlessly. And this is when that switch happened. I started working out and stuff. And I came home from football practice. I was like 12. And, you know, the kids were just mean to me. And they were like kicking my ass in practice and just like laughing at me. And I came home crying. I was like, Dad, like, everyone's mean to me and all this. And he's like, son, look, I love you, but like, there's nothing I can do. You're out there by yourself. And he's like, so if you're going to come home crying every day, maybe you should just quit. And I don't know what happened, but it was like, it's almost like I expected my parents to protect me. And like that conversation, my dad just let me know, he's like, look, no one owes you anything. Like the world's mean. Like you have to go out there and like do it yourself. And like something just clicked. And that was just a pivotal moment in my life. And I think just my dad's example, like my dad, like never would let our family go without. And so even when stuff got tight, like I would always see my dad, like he would just make it happen. And so I don't know. I think from a young, and to add on to that, sorry to go off tangent, but like there was a practice as well where same thing, like I was running and my dad's like, you know, after practice, like, hey Tanner, like you weren't really running that hard. And I was like, yeah, like I was tired. And he's like, okay. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, why does that matter? And I was actually confused. I was like, well, Dad, like, what do you mean? And he's like, you run hard no matter what. And the next practice, and I was one of the worst players on the team. And so the next practice, I get second place every time. There's one guy faster than me. He was the running back. And I became one of the best players on the team. And so after my first year of football, I become captain of the team. And I'm like, you know, one of the best players all the way through high school, all state, stuff like that. And I just think like my dad had a lot to do with it. And I don't know what else. I think it's probably just insecurity. It was a mixture of that and then just kids making fun of me. And it made me feel like I wasn't good enough and I had something to prove. And that stayed with me through adulthood. I mean, to today, I still have that. Yeah,
I think it seems like, and again, I haven't said this, but you know, my audience knows this. The context for my show is I am trying to find the common threads of outlier success and frankly distill them into stuff that is accessible and choosable. Now, somebody may hear them and go, I don't want that, but it won't be because they don't know what it is, right? And so when I hear these themes, I like to reflect on them. And I hear this theme a lot with my guests where there's some experience of realizing that you're alone, realizing that it's on your shoulders, and getting an early taste of the ability to overcome that sort of dread that comes with that realization. For me, it was like, when I dropped out of high school, my parents were like, once you're 18, you're on your own. And in a few years, being able to teach myself piano, working 14 hours a day and get to where I could make a living at it when everybody told me I couldn't. Like that wired me forever. Like I will never doubt my ability to buckle down and get it done again as long as I live. Right. And it's like, sounds like for you had that same early experience. Do you ever work with people who maybe they're 40 and they've just never gotten a taste of what it's like to know that you have the ability to work at this crazy, like David Goggins level and produce a result, and you're trying to get them to do the work and they're just not believing, whether it's they don't believe they can, or they don't believe that if they did that it would work out. It doesn't really matter. Either way, they're not doing it. How do you, because I know you do a lot of coaching. How do you get people over that hump?
I think, belief comes after the action, right? And I think that's where most people fail, because they're not willing to fail over and over and over again and basically wonder if it's going to work. Because for 2 years, I almost quit 4 times over the first 2 years of starting my business. And it was because nothing was working. And luckily I had a mentor who kind of like would keep talking me off a ledge. But I think the main thing is, you could try to change people's mindsets. And I mean, some people are very good at that, but I think the thing for me is like, I just try to get them results as fast as humanly possible, because as soon as they get, even if it's like a little sale, they build this belief and they're like, oh, and it's like, yeah, this is real. You can do it. And so I think that's always been a main thing. And one of my coaching programs is like, where I coach people is like, our goal as fulfillment is like, get them a win as fast as possible. And there's tons of stuff you can do mindset wise. And I'm sure there's tons of books, and like, I bet even you have tons of great suggestions. But like for me, that's always at least been a core thing, because no matter who they are, where their mindset is, it's like, if we can get them a fast win, they will believe and they will do it. The hard thing is when they start, they're kind of doubting themselves, they're not sure, and then it kind of drags out. And then that's where like not a lot of people can go that long before they quit. And that's why they say, like, as long as you never quit, you'll be successful. And it sounds cliche, but it really is true, because as long as you keep going, unless you have an actual mental disability, you put your hand on the stove, you won't do it again, and you keep trying new things, it will work.
I'm curious, do you ever feel like, I mean, obviously if somebody's paying you to coach them or help them get a result, you want them to get their money's worth.
Sure,
help them get the result. But aside from the money, is there ever a part of you that's like, you haven't suffered enough, you haven't earned it, you need a quick result to stay in the game? Like, you don't even deserve to be in the game.
Yeah, like, but I think I've gotten more empathetic. I don't think I was at the beginning. And the reason is because to me, I was like, the way I looked at it is like, look, and there's people that have worse childhoods, so by no means am I comparing, but I was like, look, I grew up on teacher salary. I had to get everything I own. Like, nothing was handed to me. I paid, over $50,000 worth of coaching. Like, a little context of my story is I was making all my sales organically to start. So there's 0 ads, and I couldn't get ads to work. And so I was paying, $10,000, $15,000, $10,000, $5,000, $10,000 to different coaches to get the ads to work. And none of it worked. So I was funding all these programs by my own brute force with stuff already working to pay off the programs that weren't working. And so, someone like, they'll complain about some of the, most basic things. And yeah, so there were times where I was like, man, like, dude, don't like, just no, like, you just started, right? But I think over time I've become a little more empathetic, because I realized, some people maybe didn't have the parents I did, or didn't have the work ethic instilled in me that they did. And at the end of the day, it's like, you just have to come in, I think, with like a level of service to try, like, you're trying to help. And I think when you started, and, we talked about this a little bit, is it's so money motivated. And so to be honest, like, it was like at any cost. I mean, pretty much outside of it being illegal or like deceitful or like against the law, like I was going to do it because I was so desperate. Like, I was so desperate, and that was my only way out. But once you have more than enough in abundance, like, yeah, you still want to grow, you still want to make money, you still want to grow a business, but it's got to become more about that. Because I remember distinctly when I moved to Miami, I was in a $6-7 million penthouse. I had just bought a $500,000 Lambo, and I was single, and there's beautiful girls down there. I was like, man, dude, like I'm so unhappy. Like I remember that distinct moment. I was like, why am I unhappy? Like, and I just had $1 million month, my first $1 million month. And that was kind of where it started to shift. And I'm not perfect yet, but it just has to become more about people, because that's the other thing. Like, if you're going to keep working, you're going to keep pushing, you have to there has to be something besides the money. Like, and that took me a long time to understand, because I was just so driven by like scarcity and like, what's going to happen if I don't make this work? So hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. It reminds me a lot of Grant Cardone. I remember him talking at one point about how your assets become your liabilities over time.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like the whole like, in your case, I'm so driven to work hard to generate this result, to prove that I can, prove to myself, prove to other people. That got you really far. But then at a certain point, that will end up being the death of you or the decline of you, because, you know, it's like there's different fuels for different seasons. Mm-hmm. And it's cool because you're 30, right?
Yeah, I just turned 30.
And you're making, and how long ago would you say you had that moment when you were so miserable but so rich?
Probably 2 years ago, like two and a half years ago. And like, I still a work in progress. I mean, I by no means am I perfect, but it's just hard to keep always being angry all the time and just mad. And like, you know, it's like, it's a very powerful motivator, but it just doesn't feel good after a while. You know, it's like being angry and mad all the time at the world, and just like any little thing someone says, like, I'm going to prove him wrong. And it can be powerful, but I think it's got to shift, or like, you're just going to always be miserable. And it's always going to just be about you. And like, when it's always about you, the irony is like, when it's always about you, you won't go as far as if you make it about others. And then the irony making it about others is it comes back to you anyways. Like,
yeah, there's definitely a ceiling. And the reason I was asking about your age, you know, for me, I had that same epiphany when I was living in New York City.
Yeah.
And at like 30, I think I was 31, 32, right? And then I told you when I was on your show, I told you about meeting my wife and, you know, learning to love and all the soft, wonderful things about life, and how that was the catalyst for me to make that shift. But I'm curious, you say there was a moment, and you're still a work in progress, but in terms of making that shift, I mean, in full candid self-reflection, where would you say you are in that pivot?
Yeah. I mean, I'd say like 80% of the way there, 85%. I mean, the shift for me was...
Which, by the way, let me just say not being 100%, I don't judge that.
Yeah.
Most people never get to 1%.
Yeah, I mean...
You know, they live their life on the treadmill of lack and need, and then eventually they die, and it's usually on their deathbed they realize, like, oh, there was another way to be. So.
And like, for me, like, it really, like, I was in a very dark place. I was very depressed, and I was going to a lot of therapy, and I'm not against therapy. You know, maybe I was doing it wrong. I'm really open-minded. It just like didn't feel like it was helping. Like, I was going and I was talking with, like, dude, I just still feel terrible. And I think when you have more than enough, you start realizing how insignificant you are. And that really was hard for me to be like, look at all I've done, and still like...
Well, you're in Miami too. You're surrounded by people that are loaded and vapid.
Just crushing. Yeah, I mean, I lived in a building with David Beckham and, you know, like people of that caliber. And I just remember like thinking, man, like as much as I've done, like I'm still kind of nothing. And so I kind of went in this deep, dark depression. That's when, you know, I started talking to Alex a little bit, and he really helped me, because his views, you know, whether you agree with them or not, his views are kind of, you know, more along the lines of like, well, you know, dude, nothing really does matter, and it doesn't matter if it doesn't. It's
he's like the positive nihilist.
Positive nihilist, right? And I didn't even like really know that was like a frame of thinking. And, you know, I came more from like an LDS background, but it was like interesting because people would say stuff. I remember like, and he's talked about like, they're like, dude, like all you do is work. Like, oh, you gotta enjoy this. You gotta do that. And I'm not against that stuff. And I think I do to a degree, but like I had to get really okay with like the fact that I like to push myself and I like to enjoy work just because I like it, not because like I still needed money. And it was so money motivated that once I had all the money, I was like, why am I doing this? And I had to kind of like figure that stuff out. But yeah, so I think I'm doing better. I definitely am, you know, more to like improve on. My younger brothers, it's hilarious. Like literally yesterday, we're in a room having a private conversation, and I'm struggling with stuff that they're not struggling with. I'm their older brother, but they're both married and I'm not. And there's some stuff we were talking about, and they're just like, their level of emotional maturity, I think is above mine, which, you know, some people may not know, but I just think sometimes like in situations, I'm just like, it's this way or it's this way. And it's like, no, dude, like it's a lot of gray and there's a lot of different ways to handle it. So I've gotten better. I think obviously being aware is a like first step, but I've come a long way and I'm definitely happier than I was. I'll say that.
So I appreciate, you know, I really appreciate your, you know, like having this conversation.
Yeah.
This isn't like your typical podcast combo,
No.
but this is what I love to try to get to on my show is like the real stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I said earlier, I think there's like 2 non-negotiable requirements for massive success, and one of them is that work ethic, and the other is the ability to genuinely give people the sensation that you deeply care about them.
Yeah.
Like essentially, how do people feel when they interact with you? And so one thing that I want to go back to, that my thesis is maybe you aren't giving yourself enough credit, is how old were you when you were a trainer who made $1 million?
25.
You were 25.
25, yeah.
Like training people's hard. Getting people to change is hard.
Oh yeah. It's more
Doing it over
therapy.
the internet
Yeah.
is, I have to imagine, even harder.
Yeah.
And you obviously did it well. I'm going to assume, I mean, considering the number of people that try to do virtual training, and like, I don't think the average person makes $1 million in a year doing it ever, much less early in their career.
Yeah.
I have to assume that actually you did care about your people.
Yeah, I did. And I'm good with people. But there's also, you know, be fully transparent. There's a dark side to me where like I can get very cold and I can get very just like at all costs. And I don't ever think I did it at the detriment of people. Like I did try to do the right thing, but you know, again, I don't know if it was just like part of how my dad's work ethic was. I just think I was so scared of failure and just people's disapproval. And there's still some of that. And you know, a lot of conversations like I have with people close to me is like, Tanner, like, hey bro, like nobody cares, man. Like you don't have to prove anything. You're good without all that stuff. And like they kind of reel me back in because sometimes I'm just competitive by nature. I want to be the best. And you know, someone, you know, it's like a lot better now. Trust me. I mean, I used to respond to every ad comment, like every ad.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, oh, dude, you don't know me and stuff. But there's a few times someone might make a comment or say something or that's hurtful. And then that kind of anger will kind of start to rise. But yeah, I cared about people and I tried to, and I've gotten better at it too. Like it's definitely become less about the money because, you know, when it's easier said than done, right? Like when I used to say when people said that, I was like, dude, you're broke. Like you're broke. Shut up. Like you don't know. Like the reason you say money doesn't matter is you're broke. But once you do have an abundance of money, you do realize like, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't really matter. And it's more like the scoreboard of what we're doing. And that's what motivates me. And I'm sure it's part of what motivates you is like, can we build $1 billion company? Like that's cool. And it's not about being a billionaire. It's about like who you become. And like, you do have to become a new person. And like, even as like, I'm trying to go to the next level, like I've learned like, I gotta be a better leader. Like I have to hire better people. I have to train better. I have to be more caring. Like I have, you know, and so anyways, like, that's where that competitiveness comes from. Cause like, I'm like, I know I can do it, but like, I need to do it. So
yeah. I feel like there's sort of this sense of like the competition, because I'm the same way. I was never a good enough athlete to make my competitions physical in nature. I just would have I just would have lost. That would have been like setting myself up to lose. But I would compete intellectually. Like I used to be like super obsessed with, like we used to do these things called like math minutes. And it was like, how many math problems can you solve in a minute in my school? And like, I had to win. Like I had to win. And if I lost, I would go home and I would like do math into the wee hours. And like, I mean, it's stupid. Like, so I totally get that. But I have felt like my competitive nature has shifted. And without describing what I mean by that, I'd like to hear if you feel like describe the evolution of your competitive nature as you've moved up the ladder of success.
Yeah, I think it becomes less adversarial. Like I even had a mentor, like, you know, we probably both needed to mature, but end of the day, like I took exception to some things he did, and he like became the enemy. And it's like, all right, I'm going to show you like I'm better than you, I'm smarter than you, like all those types of things. And I think the shift is like, it becomes less adversarial, where it's like there's enough for everyone, and it's just more inspiration. Like I want to surround myself with guys who are ahead of me. Like I don't want to be around guys where I'm at. That doesn't, like, I'm like, I want more. So like I've tried to surround myself with guys at another level. Right. And, you know, I try, like, to be honest, like, I don't, like, a lot of my friends are older, and I want that because they're ahead of me. And so, but it's more inspiration. So the average person, I think they look at someone and they're like, what trust fund are you from, or this or that? And I'm just like, dude,
whose neck did you step on
and
to get
like,
where you
exactly.
are?
And it's just like, there's just everyone I've met who's ultra successful. I'm sure there's always anomalies, but pretty much everyone I meet is like, they got good qualities about them. They're a good person. They work hard. They busted their butt to get there. And those are things like I want to be around because it inspires me to be a better person, a better human. And I think that's what it's all about. Like, you know, there's only so much, and I enjoy myself, but there's only so much you can enjoy yourself or party or do stuff. It's like we are meant to work. I believe that. And so I feel my best when like I'm working my hardest and I'm like, my team is benefiting and other people are benefiting. And like, that's a good feeling. So
you mentioned, you said one thing about wanting to get to the next level, and I love talking to, you know, high performance entrepreneurs because there's a kinship, right?
Sure.
Like we get each other in a way that frankly most people I don't think get us. So I'm curious for you, looking at yourself, looking at where you want to go, for you to reach whatever your next level is, which I'd be interested to hear what you think that looks like. But I'm even more interested to know what it is you think needs to grow inside of you. Like, what are the qualities you need to develop in order to make you the person that can get to where you're trying to go?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, I mean, it's always being curious. I'm very curious. I always come back to like, I just think it has to be leadership, because when you get to, you know, multiple 8 figures and you're trying to go 9 or 10 figures, like it's all about the team, 100% about the team. It has nothing to do with you. And so you go from like, pretty much it's all you till, you know, probably maybe 100K depending. And then, you know, it's still a little bit about you, but then you start getting just like, it is so beyond you and your talent that I think that has to be with like, how can I attract high quality people? How can I train them better? And it's hard to attract people you're not like. It's just like dating. Like if you do certain things, you attract those types of people. And so to me, it's like, if I was to look at like, why am I not where I need to be? It's because I am not a good enough leader, or I am not, you know, attracting those types of people. Cause like that's also more empowering to me than going, well, look, I'm just not lucky, or like, oh, well, it's my business model. I mean, yeah, like maybe, but it's just like, there's no power in that. And so based on like who I've seen and the people I admire and the people ahead of me, like people respect them and they seem like good leaders and people seem to love them, and like they're always with service, and like there's just, I think that's like what I have to do more of, you know. And I'm open-minded to like, you know, it could also be the wrong vessel. I've really, you know, I hate to keep bringing Alex up. Sometimes he's probably like, gosh, dude, please stop. But like his book, $100 Million Offers, was great because like, I kind of knew that, I think, but it's like when entrepreneurs say you need to be reminded, like that book, I was like, dude, yes. Because like, as I had these portfolio companies, like, dude, this company grew way faster. And I was like, that's why it grew faster. So there's a few things like that, but I just think I need to become a better person, a better leader, attract, you know, higher quality talent, you know, don't be afraid to hire top talent. I think you start the business, you hire people who are the cheapest on the payroll, and then you realize like, dude, you can't skimp anymore. You got to pay the top dollar to get the top talent. So, you know, hopefully that summarized okay, but I think it's all of those things.
I think that's beautifully said. And I'll restate it, make sure I get it right. But I mean, that I love what you said about like, you can't attract people that are too dissimilar to you. Like, and if you want to attract the best people, you have to have more in common with the best people. You have to be better yourself.
Correct. Yeah.
That's really poignant. Frankly, for me, you know, we're at about 150 person team now.
It's huge. Yeah.
And it's so true, man. Like what got you here of like, oh, I'm going to use the cheap outsource option on Fiverr or you know, Upwork or whatever. Like, no, man, like we're pulling people now from, you know, Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies. We're enticing them. Hey, come work for the lean startup that has more upside, right? Yeah. But they come in and they're like, wait, you're going to lead me? Yeah. Like, you got some work, you know, and you feel that. You're like, I got some work to do to be even qualified to to not feel like a chump having these people come work with me,
Yeah.
you know? So I think that's really cool that you said that. But I also don't think that just starts once you hit 8 figures or you hit 100 people. I think there's an element of that on day one, whether it's I want to attract better people or I want to get the best out of the people that I'm working with. Either way, you're not going to get more out of people than you're able to bring to people. So
I agree. Right? I agree. And it's like, it has to be more about them, right? Yeah. It's like you can trick, like, it's like what I was saying earlier, you can trick maybe some lower level or entry level, you know, like, oh yeah, it's about you, and it's not. But like, you know, when you get top talent, they're like, dude, look, like, what's in it for me? And like, I think you can always count on people, and I'm sure they care about the mission, but it's like, you can always count on people to do what's best for them. So like, what I found is like, the more I try to really align that, like, hey, what do you want? Like, what do you want out of this? It always ends up coming back to you. And that took me a long time to understand, because I was just like, no, I'm not paying you that much. Like, that's too much and this and that. And so it's a shift for me, and I'm still working on it, but I've definitely gotten a lot better.
What do you think is the key or keys? Like what's your approach to, there's this buzzword of like culture, right? Building culture in your organization. And it gets kind of used and abused, but it's also not something that can be ignored. Yeah. So I'm curious your approach and thoughts on culture.
Oh man, that's such a good question. I thought it was such a bunch of baloney, to be honest. I was like I used to have this huge stigma against like mindset stuff or just like culture, and but like in general, I was like, guys, like just like do the work, just shut up, do the work, right? But I think the meaning of culture, like, and maybe if you have 3 words or 3 traits, like, that's like what you tell everyone every day. You're like, guys, this is what we want. These are the types of people we want. This is what we value. And the point of that is when no one's looking, or you like, you're not there, it's like they know that's what you care about, and hopefully their actions align with that. And if they don't, those people are not a fit for your team. And, you know, as I started like really trying to implement that into my companies, I've seen it. Like as people leave, or like if someone we let go, it's like, dude, they lost the value. Like they were doing it, or maybe they had done it, but they stopped. And like for us, our big 3, we actually like, we're talking about them today and redid them, was like hard work, utmost integrity. And then the other one is just being like proactive mindset. Like I want people who just like, they want to be their best, and they are always looking for solutions, and not just like, hey Tanner, like, what do I do? Like that's not going to grow the company. Like I need you to do it. I need you to like be proactive and want to do it. So anyways, I'm a lot more into it now. I'll say that, like way more than when I started. Yeah. That's our first value at Entre, is that we operate like owners, where we want everybody. It's kind of what you're saying. 100%. It's almost like entrepreneur. Even if you're not an entrepreneur per se, it's being entrepreneurial inside of a business, to take initiative, act like it's your capital and your neck on the line, and like you deeply care about the result. Yeah, and like the human currency, I mean, like I just think everyone values across like all cultures, all religions, everyone, like just like hard work, you know. And just when someone works hard, I'm just so much more willing to bend over backwards or train them, because I'm like, bro, like you're putting in work, like you're putting in time, you're putting in hours. I just have so low tolerance for just good enough. Because it's just like, why would you not do it your best every time? And so that's like my no tolerance. So that's like the absolute, like if you won't work hard and you're not gonna like do your best, like I just don't want to deal with it. That's at least me. Yeah. So I'm curious, what do you feel like about there's sort of a stereotype in the market, especially in the last couple of years, post-pandemic. It's like everybody just wants to sit at home and collect unemployment, right? Like what's your experience with people, and do you feel like enough historical perspective to say, has it changed? Has it gotten better? Is it getting worse? Like where's the world at? I mean, we've always been 100% remote and online. Okay. So I think those people are out there who want to work hard. But, you know, I mean, a lot of people, when the pandemic hit, I mean, they were going from a corporate 9 to 5, and then they got a little taste of that at home. They're like, oh, like no one's watching me, no one's managing me. And so that might've been a hard transition for some people. But I think on my team, like I said, we do a pretty good job. We make it so that you will get weeded out. Like you won't survive because you're not going to like our environment and how hard we push. But yeah, I mean, I definitely saw that post-pandemic, but I think it was more for people who maybe like had done corporate their whole life. I think people who start in remote and work remote, I mean, guys like you and me pretty much did it day one. Like it didn't make a difference to me. I was like, it doesn't matter if no one's looking. Like I'm going to work hard regardless. And I think it's the difference between someone who's like, is someone watching me? And then someone who's like, they're just doing it no matter what. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, tell me a little bit about your book. It's what we call Infinite Income.
Infinite Income. Yeah. So that's the first book I wrote. In hindsight, like, it's not like I didn't do my best, but I think now in hindsight, I wish I had done more. I had, I had like editors and copywriters who basically would take my thoughts, ghostwriters and stuff, and they helped with most of it. And I think, it was my thoughts, but in hindsight, like, I wish I had written it myself. Like, I wish I had just put all my time and effort into it because, like, a couple good friends of mine, when they put their books out, they're so good. And they're like, yeah, dude, like, I spent like 1 to 2 years on this thing. I was like, dude, one. And they're like, yeah. And I was like, it just put into context. I was like, I didn't put enough time. But long story short, the book goes through, a little bit of my backstory, and then it goes through how I built my business. And it's like each step of the way. And I try to it's tactical. Like, I try to give examples of exactly what to do. Cause the thing that annoyed me personally when I was on the up and coming was, just like, they were telling me all this fluff. I was like, dude, I just like, please I just need to know, like, what's the numbers? What do I need to do? What's the action I need to take? And so that's a lot of what my book is like, if someone is starting from scratch, they want to build an online business, they don't know what to do, I just tell my journey. Like, I'm like, I was at zero, I had $0. This is how I got to $1 million in a year and, and beyond. And so that was like my first book, and, hopefully people enjoy it and, they read it.
Well, we're about out of time.
Yeah.
I actually, which I have a whole other questions. We'll just have to have a part 2 or something. Any final thoughts, man? Anything you'd like to share with the audience? And obviously I want you to tell them how they can come find you and learn more about you. But
no, I mean, I think the biggest thing is just cliche. It's just like, you just can't give up. I just look at, like, I almost gave up, and I say this to people, my opportunity cost just in revenue to date would be around $49.6 million. Because if I had taken that job and I hadn't dropped out and I hadn't, gone through those trials and errors, and that's not to mention all the people on my team, like my 2 brothers, one had a kid unexpectedly, 21 years old, type 1 diabetes, no college degree. Like, he's working a $3,000 a month job. Like, just stuff like that. Like, it impacts people a lot. And you don't know sometimes. And I think, like, that's the scary thing, is people will never know what they wouldn't have had because they never did it. And so I think that's just like the final word. I appreciate you having me. Like, you're super inspirational, guys. Like, Jeff, obviously you're one of the killers, and it was like super pleasure to meet you. Just, if anyone needs anything from me or wants to find me, eliteseals.com is the main site. And then my Instagram, Tanner.Chidester, and, I'm enjoying life. I'm enjoying business right now. And so, I just want to help people. And so I know you're on that same mission. So yeah, thanks for having me, man. It was a blast.
If you loved that episode, then you're definitely going to love this one. Check it out.
What's the difference between winning and losing? What's the separator between success and failure? What's the separator between being happy and sad? I believe it's one more. You're one decision away from changing your life. You are much closer than you think that you're one away.